Well, Fitch just downgraded the U.S. debt. And that means that we've gone from a AAA to a AA, similar to what happened back in 2011. Now, of course, with the S&P, when there was the last debt ceiling debate, should we pay our bills? Should we not pay our bills? Well, now they want you to think that that doesn't matter. And of course, today we also had Moody's come out and do a whole bunch of bank downgrades and put a whole bunch of other banks on credit watch. So again, they want you to think, it doesn't matter, the debt doesn't matter, the grading doesn't matter, because after all, it's the markets that's going to determine the interest rates. Well, that's not entirely true with all the meddling that the central banks do to jury-rig all of the interest rates. But I don't know. I'm going to let you decide whether or not. Let's just look at what's going on now. You've got Fitch downgrades U.S. credit ratings, citing mounting debts and political divisions. The U.S. has been stripped of top rating by Fitch in echo of 2011 move by S&P. The U.S. was stripped of its top-tier sovereign credit rating by Fitch Ratings. The credit assessor downgraded the U.S. from AAA, a ranking the nation has held at Fitch since at least 1994. So what exactly does all of that mean? Well, it means that it's going to cost us more as we issue debt, because if they're not sure that you're going to be able to pay that debt, then they're going to demand more interest. But the U.S., here's the problem. The U.S. is still classified as the world reserve currency, which means that if you are a government, a corporation, or a citizen going outside of your borders to buy anything, you had to do it with U.S. dollars. Now that's no longer true, so that puts us in even greater jeopardy. But Fitch Ratings has downgraded the United States government's credit rating, citing rising debt at the federal, state, and local levels, and a steady deterioration in standards of government over the past 2 decades. Count them. Of course, they want us to believe that it doesn't matter. Don't you remember when we were the debt doesn't really matter? And we kept going after that. So, hey, maybe this credit rating doesn't really matter, and we could just keep going along as we are. Well, I think it does matter. I think it matters a lot. But J.P. Morgan, Jamie Dimon, calls this downgrade ridiculous. It doesn't really matter. After all, the markets determine that. Warren Buffett says he's not worried about the U.S. downgrade. Watch, he'll just keep buying more 10-year Treasury bonds. Of course, both of these entities and people have a whole lot more of this crap than you and I do. Plus, they're in the team that's been chosen to win. Because remember, as George Carlin says, this is a big club, and you and I are not in it. We need to create our own club and vote with our wallets. Because if you vote with staying in the fiat system, then you're being ruled by these guys and the central banks and so much more. Now, I will say that having them come out and saying that it doesn't matter, that it's ridiculous, makes me feel so much better, especially since that's what backs this. And I hope you realize I'm being completely facetious because I know the truth. And I agree with Bill Ackman. He says he's shorting the 30-year Treasury bills. Well, 30-year is actually a bond. And yields could hit 5.5% soon, and they could go a whole lot higher. So all of that debt that's been issued since 2008 when we went down to zero interest rates, remember, interest rates go up, the market value of those bonds go down. Well, this looks to be if this is the foundation of the global financial system and it's doing this, it means we've got a very, very shaky foundation. And I might just point out to you, since Bill is talking about the 30-year, okay, this is when issued. This is your 30 years. You can see that when interest rates move, you have a much greater move in price the further you go out. So by going out 30 years, He expects interest rates to keep going up, okay, so that he can buy this back when the market value is even lower, and that's how he makes his money. We implement these hedges by purchasing options. There are many times in history where the bond market reprices the long end of the curve in a matter of weeks, and this seems like one of those times. So all of those retirement plans that are sitting on all of that debt, this is what they're sitting on. It's kind of hard to retire on that. Further, the hedge fund manager's bearish comments come a day after ratings agency Fitch downgraded to a AA plus from AAA, drawing ire from the White House and underscoring grave concerns regarding the growing U.S. fiscal deficit. Is that going to get smaller? Heck no. Oh, wait. But wait, what about President Biden's inflation package that he put together? That's supposed to reduce the deficit. They always say that. Okay, all we have to do is spend this much money and that will reduce the deficit in 10 years when they're long gone. It never does. It never, ever does. So really, between Jamie Dimon, Warren Buffett in the White House, and Bill Ackman, who do you think is going to be right? I'm betting on Bill. I'm absolutely betting on Bill. No, this is the federal debt. Now, I want you to keep in mind that these gray bars are official recession. And you might notice that as we were lifting off into this new debt-based system, then when we would hit that gray bar, the debt would grow faster and faster. And look what happened since 2008. That's a hockey stick. That's exponential. Debt ceiling has been suspended until 2025. So basically, they can spend any amount of money that they want over this next year and a half. Isn't that convenient? But they had to do it just to avoid a default. But they really were going right up to that line. At what point will they cross that line? On 8/5, which is when I pulled these numbers from the national debt clock, we were now at $32.682 trillion in debt. That's over almost $98,000 per citizen. So that would include babies, but $253,668 per debt per taxpayer. We are the ones that are responsible for this debt, and we're not done yet. The debt is going to get a whole lot higher, and so is your bill. But they don't tell us what this really means. It means, like they said in England, get used to it. You're just going to be poorer. Well, don't get used to it. Protect yourself. Become as self-sufficient and indispensable to yourself as possible. Become your own central bank. Become your own grocery store. Become your own utility company. Get this stuff done. Food, water, energy, security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, and shelter. This is what we all need to sustain a reasonable standard of living. Because, you really need to ask yourself, do you believe all their garbage and all their lies? Do you believe that they're doing this in your best interest? Or are they doing it so, really, what's the job of the government, especially big government, is to remain big and take even more. Take even more of your liberties, even more of your freedoms. CBDCs, hello. And the job of the central banks is to protect the central banks. It's not to protect you. Well, I think it's time we take it back and say, no, this is not okay with us. Because they're looking at now an estimated borrowing that was up from $733 billion to $1 trillion in just this quarter, and that's happening today. They've been issuing the debt. We'll see where it goes, but who's going to be buying this back? Well, if the market isn't out there buying it, if the Federal Reserve isn't out there buying it, because remember, they're trying to run off their balance sheet, then who might do that? Might it be institutional investors that are investing your money? Think about that.